Daniel never thought his life would come to this moment, standing stiffly in a small wooden church while the whispers of the entire village curled around him like smoke, suffocating and unrelenting. His calloused hands clenched into fists at his sides as he tried to look anywhere but at the woman beside him, the stranger he was being forced to marry. He was only 24, a rancher who had inherited a crumbling piece of land from his late father, and though he worked from dawn until the last pale light faded, he could barely keep food on his table, let alone pay off the debts that hung over him like vultures circling a dying calf. The village elders had made it clear, marry this woman. Clara and her family would settle the debt, securing his ranch and sparing him from ruin. Everyone knew her, or thought they did. Quiet Clara, the heavy-set daughter of a farmer no one spoke highly of, described in cruel whispers as plain, unwanted, too large for any man's eye. Yet here she stood, her white dress stretched across her figure, her hands clutching a bouquet of daisies so tightly that her knuckles turned white, her face betraying neither joy nor sorrow, only a calm acceptance that somehow unsettled him more than his own anger. Daniel felt the weight of pitying glances stabbing his back, men shaking their heads, women covering their mouths to hide smirks, children tugging at sleeves and asking why the rancher had to marry her of all people. He swallowed hard, his throat dry, as the preacher's words droned on, binding him to a fate he had not chosen, while Clara's eyes, soft and searching, flicked toward him just once, as if asking silently whether he would always despise her, or if someday he might look at her and truly see her. For a fleeting second, he noticed how her hands trembled, how her shoulders rose and fell with unsteady breaths, and realized that she too was trapped, forced into this union by the will of others, carrying her own invisible chains. The vows left his lips like stones, heavy and reluctant, and when the final words were spoken, and the church filled with shallow applause, Daniel felt no triumph, only a hollow ache in his chest, as though the walls of his life had drawn closer, suffocating him. Yet even in that moment of despair, something flickered faintly inside him, a question he could not shake. Was Clara truly the burden everyone claimed her to be, or was there more to this stranger than the world allowed him to see? That night, after the ceremony that had felt more like a sentence than a celebration, Daniel walked ahead of Clara into the small ranch house that had belonged to his father, the creak of the wooden floorboards echoing through the silence between them, silence so heavy it seemed to push against his chest. He lit the oil lamp, casting long shadows against the rough-hewn walls, and avoided looking at her as she stepped hesitantly through the door, clutching her small bag to her chest as though it were armor. He felt anger, resentment, and shame battling inside him, a storm he could not quiet. And though she had done nothing wrong, he could not shake the feeling that her very presence was proof of his failure, that he was too poor, too weak, too bound by duty to choose his own path. Clara set her bag gently down near the bed and whispered a soft thank you, as if even being allowed inside this house was a gift, and that humility twisted something inside Daniel's chest, though he quickly hardened himself and muttered that she could take the room while he would sleep in the barn. He saw the flicker of hurt cross her face, quick and subtle, like a candle threatened by wind, but she only nodded, her lips pressing together without complaint, and for reasons he could not understand that quiet acceptance unsettled him more than if she had protested. Out in the barn, lying on the straw beside his old horse, Daniel stared at the rafters and wondered what kind of life this marriage would become. Two strangers tied together by desperation, judged by neighbors, and bound by promises neither had wanted to make. He told himself he would endure it, keep his distance, and protect his ranch above all else. But even as he made that vow in the stillness of night, he remembered the way Clara's eyes had searched his in the church, not demanding love, not even asking for kindness, but simply wondering if he would let her exist in his world without cruelty. It was the first time Daniel realized that she was not merely a burden placed upon his shoulders. She was a person carrying her own weight, her own pain, and perhaps, though he would never admit it aloud, her own strength that no one else had cared enough to see. The following days unfolded with a strangeness that Daniel could not ignore, for though he had expected bitterness or demands from his new wife, Clara moved quietly through the ranch, as if she were a guest rather than the woman bound to him by vows. Each morning, before the sun fully broke the horizon. Daniel found her already awake, kindling the stove, sweeping the floor, or carrying water from the well with surprising steadiness despite her size. He watched from a distance, pretending not to notice, but in truth, every small act unsettled him because it challenged the image he had been given of her, that she was lazy, incapable, and unworthy. Instead, she worked with silent determination, her brow damp with effort, her steps measured, never once complaining of the roughness of the house, or the cold nights that seeped through the walls. Daniel tried to keep himself apart, spending long hours mending fences or tending cattle. But no matter how far he went into the fields, when he returned, there was evidence of Clara's presence, fresh bread cooling on the table, his boots brushed clean of dust, or the faint scent of wildflowers she had placed in a jar by the window. It frustrated him, this gentle intrusion into his solitude, for it forced him to confront a truth he did not want, that perhaps she was not the curse he imagined, but a woman quietly shaping a place for herself in his world. One evening, when a storm rolled in and the wind howled through the rafters, Daniel saw her standing at the barn door, her dress damp from rushing to help him gather the frightened animals before the rain grew heavier. Without hesitation, she grabbed a lantern and waded into the mud, her voice calm and steady as she guided the animals to shelter, her hair plastered to her face by the rain, yet her eyes fierce with determination. Daniel froze for a moment, stunned by the sight, realizing that she was not fragile as he had assumed. She was strong, unafraid of work, and willing to stand in the storm beside him. That night, as they returned to the house soaked and shivering, Daniel caught himself glancing at her with a flicker of respect he had not intended, a small crack forming in the wall he had built around his heart. And though he still kept his distance, sleeping in the barn more often than not, he could not deny that the stranger he had been forced to marry was slowly revealing herself to be something more than the burden everyone had whispered about, something he could neither name nor ignore.